Welcome to MSL Stories. Friends, if you don't mind, please subscribe to my channel. I have a dream of 1,000 subscribers. Thank you. Let's start the story. I nearly dropped my phone onto the polished tile floor of the hospital corridor when I read the text. It came from my wife, Marina, who said she was sending me some important papers to sign. I was 38 at the time, in for a routine checkup that was supposed to be quick. She knew I'd be there all afternoon, yet the tone of her message was icily formal. No hint of affection or concern. A second notification followed. I'm leaving for California. I've sold what I could from our place. Sign the divorce forms. My stomach lurched. There'd been friction in our marriage, but that abrupt dismissal seemed unreal. I remember leaning against the wall, letting the hum of fluorescent lights and the faint odor of disinfectant wash over me as I pieced things together. It wasn't as if we hadn't clashed before, arguments over finances, differences in lifestyle. But I never expected a departure. The cruelty of it left me stunned. I'm Elias, an automation engineer in Indianapolis. I grew up in a quiet town, studied engineering at a state college, and landed a steady job that paid well enough for a modest lifestyle. I didn't hunger for flashy cars or extravagant travel. I was content with a well-maintained house and a stable routine. Marina, 36, worked part-time at a design agency. Her main gigs involved staging model homes and consulting for local real estate firms. She had an eye for aesthetics that others admired. Our house, though not luxurious, was styled with her impeccable taste. 3 days after that text, she called me with a sob in her voice, claimed her trip to California ended disastrously. The man she ran off to meet, a self-proclaimed soulmate, never even showed up. She said she felt stranded and humiliated and wanted me to take her back. The irony was too sharp. She'd left me like a discarded coat, sold off furniture she'd once adored, and now expected me to reverse course and rescue her. I held the phone in silence, letting her words linger. My only reply was a curt goodbye before hanging up. That sliver of pity I felt couldn't overcome the anger boiling inside me. I finished my final tests at the hospital without telling anyone about her call. When I was discharged, I stopped by a hardware store. It was late afternoon, and the sky was dull gray. Rows of deadbolt locks caught my eye. Replacing every lock in my house felt like a step toward reclaiming a life that had been stomped on. I bought 2 new sets, front door, back door, called Greg Jarvis, a locksmith friend, to ask if he had time to install them. He did. While we worked, I noticed the missing furniture, the sofa we'd picked out together, the glass coffee table we inherited from her aunt, a few pricey lamps. The space looked hollow, as though a chunk of my existence had been carved out. Before I could even take a breath in my newly secured home, my phone beeped again with another voicemail from Marina. I played it on speaker. More wailing apologies, references to mistakes, claims she felt lost. I pressed delete. My mind was set. The marriage was over and it wasn't going to be salvaged by her tears. That night, I sat in the living room. My reflection stared back at me from the TV screen. In that silent moment, I decided not to remain in that half-empty house. I booked a flight to British Columbia. The next morning, I boarded a plane to Vancouver, then took a small charter flight to a mountain lodge. I'd been there once on a short work trip, and it had a certain rugged tranquility that appealed to me. I craved isolation and fresh air, not pity from acquaintances or stares from neighbors who might wonder why my living room looked ransacked. The lodge was perched amid towering evergreens with a view of snowy peaks in the distance. By day, I wandered along hiking trails, trying to burn off my resentment. By night, I sipped hot chocolate by the fireplace, allowing the hiss of the flames to calm my restless thoughts. The first 2 days, I deliberately shut out the world. No calls, no emails. On the 3rd day, though, I answered an unexpected call from my friend Noah Tucker, a 40-year-old paramedic who worked at the same hospital where I'd been tested. He told me Marina had tried to break into the house, claiming it was still hers. The new locks foiled her. She was furious, threatened lawsuits, and even called the police, insisting I had illegally changed locks. Noah said the police left after verifying that I was the rightful owner, and that no immediate crime was committed. I extended my stay at the lodge by another week. Something about feeling unattached to my usual environment helped. I had to handle the legal mess eventually, but I wanted a brief reprieve. Then one evening, as I watched the mountain sunset, a plan for a thorough comeback, an actual revenge formed in my mind. It was a decision I made without moral ambivalence. If she believed I would just roll over and watch her take what she wanted, she was mistaken. I returned to Indianapolis, consulted an attorney named Angela Jennings, 42, who specialized in family law. She was a composed, sharp-witted professional. I told her everything. How Marina had sold shared property without warning, run off with a lover, and was now threatening me for alimony or partial ownership of the house. Angela asked for evidence. I mentioned I had discovered some photos and messages on Marina's old laptop, along with texts from neighbors who saw her haul off furniture. Angela said we'd use every bit of it to counter any demands she made. I rummaged through the house to gather more clues. Marina had left behind her outdated laptop. On it, I found a cache of images of her and a man named Darren, timestamps indicating this affair went back months. I transferred them onto a flash drive. The pictures showed them at restaurants, airports, and art gallery. There were even references in emails discussing how she would move to California, expecting Darren to fund her dream of opening a design studio. It looked like he had his own issues, some references to debts, talk of scamming potential investors. A twisted partnership built on illusions. My breathing steadied when I realized I could use these details to strengthen my legal stance. I confided in Noah about Darren. He recommended a private investigator named Fiona Lee, 39, who had experience in financial fraud cases. Fiona uncovered Darren's background, multiple aliases, civil lawsuits for unpaid loans, and a pattern of cozying up to people with resources until he milked them dry. I recognized it as a classic con. He'd clearly abandoned Marina once he saw no profit in continuing with her. Shortly after, Marina showed up demanding entry. She said she had a key, an older one, of course, so I should let her in. I said no. Our standoff took place with the front door between us. I felt her frustration through the thick wood. She threatened to take me to court, an accusation that sounded hollow because that was precisely the direction this was heading, only on my terms, not hers. In the following weeks, a child's voice re-entered my home. Lucy, my 10-year-old daughter from my previous marriage. My first wife passed away years ago, and Lucy split time between her grandparents' house and mine. She didn't live with me and Marina full-time, but she regarded Marina as a stepmother figure. Now Lucy stood in the half-empty living room, eyes darting around, confused. She had caught wind of the turmoil, and it frightened her. I knelt down to reassure her that our home was still our home, minus the furniture Marina had taken. Lucy asked if Marina would return. I replied gently that she might try, but we wouldn't be going back to the way things were. Lucy nodded with a tentative acceptance. I'd always been protective of Lucy, determined not to let adult conflicts overshadow her life. Marina's betrayal felt even sharper when I saw Lucy's sadness. For me, the divorce wasn't just personal heartbreak. It was the knowledge that Marina had ditched both of us, only to reappear when her fantasy collapsed. My attorney, Angela, insisted Lucy's perspective was important for the overall context, even though Lucy wasn't Marina's biological child. We got Lucy's statements recorded to show that Marina had left with no warning and displayed no concern for Lucy's well-being. Meanwhile, I tested a strategic idea. I found out Marina planned to attend a real estate conference where she intended to showcase her interior design services to potential clients. She must have been desperate to rebuild her professional reputation after the chaos in California. It didn't sit well with me that she could keep forging new prospects without her unethical behavior becoming known. With Fiona and Noah's help, I compiled a folder of everything we had on her and Darren. Photos, stolen assets, direct quotes about her plan to siphon funds from our joint account. Then, I turned it into a straightforward packet labeled Marina and Darren, Evidence of Professional Misconduct. We printed a few dozen copies with a concise introduction explaining how they orchestrated personal and financial deceit. On the morning of the conference, held at a bustling downtown hotel, Noah and I arrived early. My goal wasn't to publicly shout accusations. Instead, we positioned these folders around the press area, near coffee stands, and in the lounge where sponsors congregated. The front page warned potential partners to read the contents before considering any contract with Marina or Darren. We lingered near the back of the exhibit hall, away from her direct line of sight. The place was buzzing with realtors, designers, and developers. People picking up the packets wore puzzled looks, flipping through the pages. A ripple of murmurs formed. Marina was at her booth, projecting a confident front, a neat display of color swatches, well-designed brochures, and a friendly, professional smile. Then a cluster of attendees approached her, folder in hand. I saw the confusion in her eyes as they questioned her about the allegations. She tried to maintain composure, but more people joined in. Soon her expression twisted into panic. Eventually, She spotted me across the room. We locked eyes. Her earlier arrogance vanished. She left her booth, wove through the crowd, and confronted me in a lowered, furious voice. "What is this?" My response was matter of fact. A fair notice to anyone who might be deceived. All factual information. She sputtered threats about lawsuits for defamation, but I shrugged. Everything in those folders was verifiable. Others gathered around, listening. Conference organizers stepped in, trying to diffuse the commotion. I slipped away. Noah followed me. As I walked past the exit, I heard her frantic pleas with security or event staff, claiming her ex-husband was out to get her. A sense of vindication coursed through me as I got into my car. It might not have been a heroic act, but it ensured she couldn't continue her business under false pretenses. By the next day, rumors spread within the design community that her booth had been shut down early. Marina's phone calls and texts multiplied. I ignored them or forwarded them to Angela. About a week later, I learned Darren had also been hit by legal problems. Fiona shared that the attorneys involved in his ongoing civil suits were delighted to see the new evidence. He was apparently facing a hearing and might face judgments for his fraudulent dealings. Not surprising, he preyed on people with resources, including my now soon-to-be ex-wife, then vanished at the slightest sign of trouble. While the professional damage to Marina was significant, we still needed to finalize the divorce. Angela filed a thorough petition outlining Marina's infidelity, the property she'd taken without consent, and her attempt to re-enter the house by force. In response, Marina demanded alimony. Angela shot that down swiftly, citing the evidence that Marina had already seized valuable assets and abandoned the marriage. The judge, upon reviewing everything, made it clear that Marina couldn't expect sympathy. Our court date arrived in a modest courtroom in downtown Indianapolis. I sat beside Angela, listening as the judge questioned both parties. Marina looked pale. Her lawyer tried to argue that she was compelled to leave due to emotional neglect, but the judge asked for proof, which was lacking. The final ruling granted me the house, the remainder of our shared savings, and required Marina to return the few items she still had in her possession. Angela told me that if Marina failed to comply, we could push for more legal action. The judge dismissed Marina's alimony request. When the session ended, my ex-wife rushed out without a glance. The gavel's echo felt like a weight lifting off my shoulders. For Lucy, the result was bittersweet. Marina had once been a part of her daily life, a figure she looked up to. Now that figure had evaporated into a tangle of lies. To help Lucy adjust, I rearranged the house into a place that no longer felt haunted by missing furniture. We replaced the couch, set up a corner for Lucy's art supplies, and added new photos. Just me, her grandparents, and a few close friends. She quietly accepted that Marina wouldn't be stepping back into this space. I could have pursued a claim that Marina reimbursed me for the items she sold, but Angela suggested it might be more trouble than it was worth. I decided to let that part rest. The humiliation Marina suffered at the conference, along with the official divorce settlement, already served as a clear message. She'd lost her professional footing in the real estate scene. Darren had his own avalanche of lawsuits. By all accounts, they both faced a steep climb. I wasn't interested in whether they'd recover. My focus was on safeguarding Lucy's future and re-establishing my own life. Noah remained a steady friend. We met up for coffee at a cafe near the hospital one afternoon. He'd heard Marina was attempting to find small design jobs here and there, none of which lasted. Maybe her name was too tarnished now. Noah said, "You did the right thing," and I believed him. In situations like ours, a clean exit can still include rightful revenge. All I did was reveal truths they tried to hide. A few months rolled by. I poured more energy into my work, even took on a management role for a new project. The corporate monotony used to annoy me, but it gave me structure after the chaos. I began exploring local hiking spots with Lucy on weekends, short drives to nature preserves around Indiana. Sometimes we'd talk about what life was like before Marina left, but mostly we focused on simpler topics. Her school projects, interesting wildlife we encountered, the random curiosities that pre-teens enjoy discussing. Our father-daughter bond felt stronger than ever. During one of these outings, Lucy quietly asked, "Does Marina miss us?" I didn't have a perfect answer. I said, if she truly missed us, she would have shown it differently. Lucy seemed satisfied with that. She was old enough to sense insincerity. The occasional pangs of sorrow still surfaced, but I was determined not to let them stall our progress. I avoided direct contact with Marina except through Angela. She tried to send me personal emails, claiming we could fix things if I just talked to her. Perhaps Darren's abandonment rattled her more deeply than she cared to admit. Or maybe she realized her reputation in the local design world was in shambles, and she needed a fallback plan. I left her messages unread. On a whim, I messaged the manager at that mountain lodge in British Columbia to see if they had any open bookings. I still had a longing for those crisp, pine-scented trails. This time, I wanted Lucy to see them too. I scheduled a week-long stay during her school break. Our flight took off on a cold, drizzly morning, and Lucy's excitement soared. We arrived at the lodge where staff recognized me from my previous visit. They welcomed us warmly, and Lucy marveled at the vastness of the mountains. She took pictures with my phone of every pine tree and rock formation. One afternoon, we trekked a gentle trail that led to a glittering lake. Lucy spotted a small fox darting among the trees. We paused by a rock to watch the fox vanish into the undergrowth. She whispered that it reminded her of how people can disappear from your life. Her observation stung, but she quickly added, "We still have each other, and I like it that way." A simple statement, but it carried the reassurance I needed. At night, we sat by the lodge's stone fireplace, sipping warm drinks. The memory of Marina's betrayal was still there, but it felt like a distant echo rather than an open wound. Lucy deserved a life unburdened by that fiasco, and I wanted to set a solid example. By finding closure in a methodical, lawful revenge, I was able to redirect my energy into building our new reality. After returning to Indianapolis, I filed away the last legal documents with Angela's help. Our communications with Marina's side dwindled. Occasionally, an email from her lawyer would appear, referencing small logistical details about dividing old membership fees or canceling a couple's gym pass, but no significant disputes remained. Still, a final piece of satisfaction awaited. Fiona Lee informed me that Darren's civil case had escalated. The evidence we provided helped other plaintiffs confirm his pattern of fraud. He was cornered. Fiona relished telling me how he was served papers at a cheap motel in Florida. Marina's name popped up among his list of enablers, and her own reputation further plummeted. Knowing they both faced genuine consequences gave me a sense of finality. Looking around my home now, I see newly installed furniture, bright color choices that Lucy and I picked out together. This house once held illusions of a perfect marriage. Now it stands as a testament that I survived betrayal and exacted the justice I believed was deserved. Every door has a fresh lock, both literally and symbolically. There's no path for Marina to waltz back in and hijack my life. Lucy's grandparents remain supportive, offering to help whenever needed. I have a small but loyal circle of friends who share dinners at my place. Sometimes I catch a fleeting thought of what life might have been like if Marina had never strayed. Perhaps we would have continued in a lukewarm marriage, ignoring deeper problems. But illusions often lead to bigger collapses. Better to face the truth and set a boundary. In the end, removing the destructive elements allowed new growth. I'm not sure what the future holds in terms of romance, but I'm not rushing into anything. For now, I'm focusing on my child, my work, and my personal interests. The taste of triumph, knowing I protected myself and Lucy and dealt a decisive blow to Marina's deceptions, makes each day easier to greet. Sure, there are scars from betrayal, yet they remind me what it feels like to stand up for what's right and refuse to be a doormat. As I finalize this account, Lucy is humming in the kitchen, making brownies with a box mix she insisted on picking out. The rest of the evening will be simple. A good meal, maybe a board game. Peace is a rare gift after turbulence. I've claimed my share of peace, and I have no intentions of letting it slip away. Thank you, friends.